A very good afternoon to all participant distinguished speakers. I'm Syam, country head for Indonesia from Singapore Business Federation, and I'll be your host for today. To our Indonesian participant, Assalamualaikum, selamat siang, salam sejahtera bagi kita semuanya. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Nama Budaya, Salam Kebajikan. Welcome to ASEAN FYI Festival. Today's webinar, Embark and Sustain Your Business Journey in Indonesia, is brought to you by Global Connect and SBF, the Globalization Initiative of Singapore Business Federation, and Enterprise Singapore. On behalf of SBF, I would also like to thank our principal partner, Convera, and advocacy partner, BIPO, for their strong support to the entire FYI Festival initiative for the second year. Well, today we are very honored to have BIPO representative to joining us as a speaker too. Welcome, Pak Mario. We look forward to his insightful sharing later. For your information, this webinar is being recorded and may be shared on SBF social media channel. So later, if any of you want to take a look again on the webinar and share this webinar, you can go to our social media channel. Next, if you have any question during the presentation, please type them into the question box in your Zoom control panel. We will address them during the Q&A session later. This will be our rundown for today's webinar. Just an insight, there'll be a total of around 6 speakers who will share their thoughts and their knowledge for this today's topic. Now, I would like to share more about Global Connect and SBF. In summary, with Global Connect SBF, Singapore business can learn with us about market, new customer, and also free trade agreement. While about learn with us, through our dedicated digital space, established network, and hands-on advice together with facilitation, and also we help to localize your business in the market through our trusted relationship abroad to deepen your presence and secure long-term sustainability business in the market. So please scan the QR code or visit our GC Global Connect SBF for more details. Moving ahead, we'll be running a GC poll. We seek your cooperation to all participants to join the poll. Thank you so much. Okay, so we will share the result of the poll shortly. Before we move, I just want to give a simple welcome remarks before we start this webinar. As you all know, Indonesia and Singapore have maintained a close relationship as a good neighbors and good partner in ASEAN. We enjoy the extensive cooperation, including on the strategic and economic, security, development, and education issues. This close relationship has made Indonesia as a country that attracts Singapore companies looking to grow their business in Indonesia. In line to that, Indonesia has continuously offered new opportunities for foreign businesses that plan to expand their services in Indonesian market. That is why building a business and investing in Indonesia has become an option that many foreign companies start to consider to enter into Indonesian market. In this webinar, our competent speakers will share about alternative perspective for Singapore businesses looking to export or even provide their service solution or products into the Indonesian market. Not only that, we believe that after this insightful discussion or presentation done by the speakers, we also have a panel discussion at the end of all presentation by the speakers. So today we all know that Indonesia has increasingly economic prosperity and enormous market size. We will also discuss the common challenge faced by businesses that when starting their journey in Indonesia. We hope that this webinar can serve as a useful guide for your business in Indonesia later. Without further ado, I would like to welcome His Excellency Mr. Kwok Fook Seng to give a keynote address, who recently has been appointed as a Singapore Ambassador to Republic of Indonesia. I would like to give my warmest welcome to Ambassador, and I wish you, sir, the best And with your leadership, we hope that Singapore and Indonesia will keep strong in our bilateral ties together with Indonesia. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Sham. Good afternoon, everyone. Selamat siang. Bapak Hishamuddin Abu Bakar, or as everybody calls him, Sham, country head for Indonesia, Singapore Business Federation. Our distinguished speakers and guests today, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for inviting me to join you at this installment of FYI Festival today. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic has changed our lives, but some changes are for the better. We are now so comfortable with Zoom, and having today's event online gives us a far wider reach, great convenience for all of you to join in and absorb content without having to leave your offices. And naturally, for those of us in Jakarta, we can avoid the macet. Now, I want to thank SBF for their continuing efforts to find creative ways to support businesses on both sides. This festival is an excellent showcase of SBF's creativity amidst the pandemic. Being a digital platform, businesses can continue to learn more about the opportunities in overseas markets through these live webinars, the online business matching sessions, and business clinics without the physical restrictions. Indeed, it is my hope that borders and geographical boundaries will recede as we move deeper into the digital age. Throughout the pandemic, Singapore and Indonesia's bilateral trade and investment relationship has continued to grow. Since 2014, we have been the largest foreign investor in Indonesia, and investment flows actually increased during the pandemic period. 2021 bilateral merchandise trade between our two countries increased 21% over 2020 to reach 59 billion Singapore dollars. Now, these numbers reflect economic confidence in Indonesia for the long term, even as businesses themselves are still recovering and building back from the pandemic. Beyond these numbers, of course, these investments represent jobs and new economic activity, which creates both upstream and downstream opportunities, many of which I'm sure you will talk about today. As Sham noted earlier, Indonesia consistently ranks amongst the top markets which Singapore companies expand into because it has a growing young population with a significant demographic dividend to be harvested. It has vast economic potential, which is underpinned by a flourishing startup economy, ecosystem, and a strong spirit of entrepreneurship. Our geographical proximity, of course, coupled with strong cultural affinity and extensive people-to-people ties, provide the ability to tap opportunities to work together. Finding an Indonesian partner to build value, to work across borders in the digital sphere, or even to partner in embracing new opportunities collaboratively in third countries. When our private sectors work well together, the government's job is to facilitate deeper cooperation. Now, key milestones in the past 2 years, again, despite the pandemic, have been met. These include the entry into force of the Singapore-Indonesia Bilateral Investment Treaty, as well as the avoidance of double taxation agreement. These treaties will introduce greater clarity and certainty for businesses. Moving forward, our two governments will continue to strengthen our economic partnership to spur economic recovery. A strong recovery for Indonesia will benefit all countries in the region. On the business and commercial front, I am very happy to note, as you would have seen from the slides earlier before this event started, that SBF has taken a further step to help businesses by setting up the Singapore Enterprise Center at Jakarta to provide business advisories to Singapore-based companies who are keen on expanding into Indonesia. I'm told that the program has provided close to 650 business advisories focused on Indonesia since its launch in November 2019. Now, today's event showcases a strong lineup of speakers whose wealth of insight and experience operating in Indonesia will benefit the audience. I wish you a fruitful webinar and much success as each of you venture further into the Indonesian market. Thank you, Sham, for having me.
Thank you, His Excellency. Thank you so much for your keynote address. As mentioned, a strong recovery for Indonesia will benefit the region. And our side as Global Connect SBF, we keep at a high speed and keep assisting a lot of Singapore companies entering the Indonesian market. Once again, thank you so much, His Excellency, Mr. Kwok Fu Seng, for the keynote address. So without further ado, next, I would like to invite our first speaker, Mr. Jeffrey Baha, to share about digital transformation in education. Over to you, Pak Jeffrey.
Hello, good afternoon, participants. My name is Jeffrey. Thank you for having me, Pak Syam and SBF. Digital transformation, next slide, please. I'll start presentation sharing the experience that digital transformation is actually happening in our day-to-day life, and it's disrupting business everywhere across industry, and that's happened in Indonesia and in the education sector as well. Next slide. The digital transformation in Indonesia, the digital economy in Indonesia, it's over 100 billion USD by 2025, and it will still continue to grow very strongly in the next 5 years from 25 to 30 by threefold. Government of Indonesia has put up strategic sectors for the growth in digital economy in Indonesia, and that's including the edtech. Beside that, we also have the health tech, agri-tech, and of course, the fintech as well. The Ministry of Education has put up 15 years roadmaps, and I think this is very timely to improve the overall education system in Indonesia through a digital transformation system. Let's look at the landscape, the demand from Indonesia. More than 80% of the school already connected with the internet, and 96% it's already connected with electricity supply. That is important to going digital. In terms of the number of students and people in the labor force, we have 40 million in the full education formal system, and that's from primary, secondary, and tertiary. For university, we have about 9 million students, and on the labor force is 50 million people in the formal sectors, with the additional of 75 million in the informal sectors. Next slide. The COVID and Industry 4.0 has been the catalyst of the digital transformation in Indonesia. There's 3 main programs that is launched. First is the digital infrastructure that actually changing the landscape and helping making this happen. Second is the program that is not just transferring the infrastructure, but also changing the policy, the ecosystem, the system, and the way the communication promoting of the transformation in education. And the third is what is really exciting is the national learning digital system that is happening within us across different aspects. Some examples of the aspects are shown on the right, and we also highlight what are the business opportunities related to the aspects of happening in the education. In the informal sectors, we see that some of these aspects are changing the informal education from e-learning, online webinar, technology-based educational service and content, edtech, paperless learning, and as well online training and certification. This gives opportunity in the edtech, especially in the product and services that is needed in Indonesia. For the formal education, beside the aspect that's already mentioned for the informal education, we also see the initiative to adopt digital library, new student admissions, as well as advancement in the campus administration, as well as academic management of the schools. And this gives opportunity on the edtech, especially on the SaaS model. Next slide. Let's look in more detail of the opportunities on the first one, the edtech product and services. In June 2020, there's about 44 edtechs in Indonesia. 1 year later, the numbers grow to 210. And they are servicing about 2,000 educational institutions and over close to 10 million students or individual. This is still a small portion compared to the populations, and it's just a mere of 5%. So there's still room to grow to provide more targeted segments and users from the edtechs. When we look at the diversity of the products, it range of these 3 and 4 categories: learning management systems, the online learning, and the career development or vocational online learning. All has an equal, more or less, composition, showing that all of this has the opportunities to be tapped and we offer in Indonesia. Let's pick the 3 top products. Number 1, we see that it's e-learning, interactive content, video on demand, online live tutorings. Those are typically the number 1 products offered by the edtechs. SaaS is also going into the education system with the target that we'll mention later, who will be the users and who will be the target user or company that you can sell to. And last is the MOOC, massive open online courses. That's also one of the top 3 trending products in the edtech in Indonesia. Next slide. Let's look at the e-learning specifically. The target of e-learning is not just the student. It could be also the parents, educator, institution, as well as corporations. Here, the e-learning helps, beside the student, also it helps educator, specifically in student management, communication, teaching, as well as the educational institution administrative matters, and it's all going digital. Product offers by edtech firm in e-learning typically range across various products and services, a very comprehensive model that is adopted. And last, the point on the opportunity on e-learning in Indonesia, it's very diversified with a lot of segments to be targeted. That shows that the gap is everywhere. 2 examples we picked from the players in the market. The names are there, we see that 1 cases, they show the learning platforms and contents across the whole spectrum from K-12 students. Another area will be specific targeted groups, and this also shows the opportunity on the early childhood education through enrichment, game-based learning, and many other models. Next slide. We'll look at the opportunity of edtech from the SaaS. Here, the demand and supplies are more than ready than any times in the past. Internet penetration connections are good. Demands are there as everyone's going to a digital transformation, digital learning. And we see that the target for edtech offering a SaaS model in Indonesia will be the educational institutions, school and campuses. And we will help them to digitize their business process from administration, attendance, and many others. Some examples are given here, similar to before. We see some players are providing the administrative in the learning management system, as well as the school administration system. Another players are offering SaaS model for a specific process, whether it's a digital report, student registration, counseling, as well as teacher performance appraisal system. Next slide. So the challenges are still here in the digital transformation in Indonesia for the education sector. First, despite the electricity and internet connection, it's already a high percentage, there still remains that is untapped. Also, you need to factor in, sometimes there's a disruption, blackout, and internet connection was down. So you need a backup plan, a model that works on the offline in case this thing still happen in Indonesia. Second challenges is on the digital literacy that is still low in Indonesia. It's translates to the action to provide more hand-holding, more sharing, more demonstrations to build up the skill, whether it's a teacher, educator, or the institutional that is still learning at this early stage. And last is the ownerships of device in some parts of the country is still lacking and needs support. So if we bundle the service with the device, in some cases that is still needed. For edtech development in Indonesia, the challenges are looked into from three angles. The supply side is the access to finance and funding, and also the challenge of getting readily available human resource to support the business in Indonesia. From demand side, it's the willingness to pay. This is all very new and very low level of digital literacy and the benefits of this. So be prepared to have an entry level package model in order to offer the product or the SaaS model in Indonesia. And last is the policy and regulation is still very limited at this early stage for funding, incentive from the government to the private education startups and many of the actors in the ecosystem. Next slide. Just a short introduction of what we are. Spire is a leading market research company in Indonesia. We're a startup in Indonesia since 2003. We've been almost 20 years here. We're part of the Yamada Consulting Group, which is our headquarters and is a public listed company in Tokyo Stock Exchange. Next slide. That's all from our sharing of the digital transformation in education sector in Indonesia. We hope it's useful. Back to you, Mr. Moderator, Pasham. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pak Jeffrey. I believe that his sharing can be very insightful for us. He has provided us information on digitalization in education sector, which has been the current focus on many countries, including Indonesia itself. Without further ado, we're going to have next Ms. Ivy Heng, my colleague from Singapore Business Federation, who is based in Singapore right now. She will discuss and share more on how free trade agreement can benefit your business. Over to you, Ms. Ivy, please.
Thank you, Sham. Hi, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Ivy Heng, as Sham mentioned, I'm his colleague. I'm an assistant director in the FTA team in Singapore Business Federation. Grateful to be here this afternoon to share information on free trade agreements, or what we usually call the FTA, and how it can actually benefit your businesses. Next slide, please. So in the next few minutes, I will share on what is an FTA, how can it help businesses, and who can actually help you in understanding, navigating these agreements. Next slide, please. So what are free trade agreements? I believe that you commonly hear these words in the newspaper or articles. So free trade agreements, they are actually legally binding agreement between two or more countries to reduce or eliminate barriers to trade in and facilitate the cross-border movements of goods and services between the territory of the parties. Next slide, please. So I have extracted this slide from Enterprise Singapore. To date, Singapore has a wide network of FTA, a total of 28 agreements with more than 65 trading partners, as you can see from this infographic. Next slide, please. So I thought it might be useful to share that, did you know actually between Singapore and Indonesia, how many free trade agreements are there? From this slide, you can see that Singapore and Indonesia, we are members of the ASEAN, and there are a total of 8 FTAs that actually businesses can tap onto. So you can look over here is the ASEAN Free Trade Area, the oldest FTA in place, and the Trade in Goods Agreement actually eliminates all tariff for virtually all product lines. Then moving down, we have those that we call the ASEAN Plus FTAs, and these are FTAs like ASEAN signs with other economies or economy like the ASEAN China, ASEAN India, ASEAN Japan, or ASEAN Korea. And we have one which is the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, in short RCEP, which I guess no need any further introduction. It is the latest FTA that entered into force, and it's also actually the world's largest FTA that comprises of 30% of the global GDP. On 30 August, Indonesia Parliament had actually approved the country membership in the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Trade Pact. And now Indonesia will submit its instrument of ratification, and we believe that it will soon be officially ratified, and businesses can also tap onto RCEP when trading into Indonesia. Next slide, please. So how can FTA help you or your businesses then? There are many chapters in an FTA, but in the interest of time, I will be sharing the main chapters, which are trade in goods, trade in services, and also investments. For the trade in goods chapter, they mainly seeks to remove tariff, address non-tariff measures. Hence, businesses can be more competitive, faster time to actually market your product in the importing market. And for the services chapter in an FTA, it deals with regulation to ensure market access and national treatment. And for the investment chapters, they seek to protect and also promote investment. Next slide, please. So I thought that it would be better for me to share a bit more information in the next few slides. So taking example of this slide on the tariff finder. So tariff saving. So how can this increase the price competitiveness of your goods? Taking example, you have a product with an export value of 500,000 from Singapore to Indonesia. Currently, the MFN rate for this product, sorry to mention that I think exporting sweet biscuits that containing cocoa with a HS code of 1905.3120 to Indonesia using FTA. So currently, without any FTA, there will be a custom duties of 20%, which is the MFN rate. And the custom duty payable by your importer is actually 100,000. However, with an FTA in place, and if the goods can meet the rules of origin, your importer can actually save this 100,000. So if you want to know more about it, feel free to reach out to our FTA team, which I will share the context at the later slides. Next slide, please. So how about services? So FTA support trade in services in 3 main ways. 1, preferential treatment. Singapore service suppliers enjoy preferential trade commitments from our FTA partners. 2, predictable operating environment. Services commitments in the FTA lock in a certain minimum level of market access for our service suppliers. In a way, the FTA serves as an insurance policy to deter our trading partner from changing their law to become more restrictive, even when government regimes changes. 3, recourse. FTA provides an opportunity for service suppliers to seek recourse should a trading partner choose to contravene its FTA commitments. So I take this example like for the ASEAN Trade in Services, which is agreement ATISA. A Singapore-based service supplier planning to provide services to the ASEAN market will be able to enjoy the widest preferential access into ASEAN service markets compared to the other existing ASEAN agreements. This is both in terms of more services sector being open to foreign participation and the increase in allowed foreign shareholding limits. Next slide, please. So for investment, as I mentioned earlier, it provides a conducive investment environment. Example for fair and equitable treatment, meaning to say that as host countries, they must make decisions based on laws and not arbitrary action, and give investors the rights to defend themselves with access to lawyers and the rights to also appeal. Most favored nation treatment. This clause actually furthers guarantee that ASEAN members receive no less favorable rights than as compared to any other country. So again, taking another example, the ASEAN Comprehensive Investment Agreement, ACIA. So investors have several options to settle disputes with host government if they believe that their rights have been infringed upon. Next slide, please. So I thought it would be useful to provide a quote from a company that has successfully tapped onto using free trade agreement. Previously, this code was given by this company, Singa Plastics, whereby they have taken advantage of the respective FTAs, and it actually helped them to gain a competitive advantage, and the export has grown close to 30%. Next slide, please. So before I end my sharing, I thought it might be useful to share some FTA resources which you can check to kick off or kickstart your FTA journey. One, you can visit Enterprise Singapore website or key onto like www.fta.gov.sg, whereby there is a comprehensive list of all the legal taxes in Singapore FTA. However, if you feel that it's too much for you to read, feel free to reach out to us also. We can help to check onto your query and then guide you along the way. Next, you can also look into Enterprise Singapore Tariff Finder, whereby this is actually a complementary trade facility tool for all Singapore businesses. And inside there, you will be able to find basic duties such as the MFN rates or the preferential tariff for importation to about more than 160 destinations. Inside the tariff finder, you will be able to find the relevant rules of origin or product-specific rules applicable under Singapore FTA as well. Tariff finder also provide general or specific requirements for importations of products into more than 135 destinations. Next slide, please. So Enterprise Singapore has this Market Readiness Assistant MRA grant where they provide support level of up to 70% for SMEs on in-depth FTA consultancy. So feel free to scan this QR code to find out more information about this MRA grant. Then SPF, we regularly work with vendors, and then we have actually published a guidebook in depth into trade in goods, and which is to help our business community to navigate free trade agreements, which you can just click onto the link and you can download the guidebook. Next slide, please. So this is my last slide, and of course, should you have any FTA query, feel free to drop us an email at fta@sbf.org. So at SPF, we regularly conduct workshops, we conduct webinars or seminars relating to specific free trade agreements or for industry sectors, or feel free to drop us an email at fta@sbf.org and we will get back to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Miss Ivy. Next, I'll just go direct to the point as we don't waste our time. So I would like to invite Pak Mario Wijaja, who will be sharing about understanding the labor law structure and compliance in Indonesia, because it's very useful and also very insightful on this information to grow your business and to expand your business in this country, as because of the new omnibus law will be implemented in Indonesia. Over to you, Mr. Mario Wijaja.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sham. Good day, everyone. Hope you're doing well. I hope my voice is quite clear. Okay, so this afternoon I will talk about the labor law structure and compliance in Indonesia. I think when we talk about the labor law structure and compliance, it's not always easy. I think it's not only in Indonesia. I think in every country, they have their own complicatedness, and also, it took some time, to really understand regarding this labor law. And of course, why we need to understand the labor law and compliance at the end of the day, when you go into a new market, like for example, if you go to Indonesia, you want to have your business running in Indonesia, or you want to expand your business to Indonesia. I mean, first thing first, you definitely need to understand who are you going to employ. And of course, with you being employed, this local Indonesian means that you need to understand what's going on with them and how to nurture them. And at the end of the day, you want them to be successful in not just as an individual or an employee, but of course, to grow your business together. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so all right. I'm not sure if everyone knows, but this is our current Indonesian president, Mr. Jokowi Widodo. So I want to quote some of his, saying actually during the speech when he was appointed as the president back in October 2019. He said something about Indonesia that we have dreams and hopes, okay, in 2045 that Indonesia has come out from middle class income and will become a developed countries, okay? And regarding the GDP, it will reach 7 trillion US dollar, and Indonesia is expected to be in the top 5 in the world economy with almost no poverty, okay? And with that dreams and hopes, he also mentioned and gives some direction. For example, to develop a strong and hardworking human capital. And of course, with that, and we all know right now in Indonesia, there's a new omnibus law that is being launched back in 2020. And this actually with this omnibus law, we try to omit any obstacles in job creation and SME development. Where actually, with this lot of job creation and SME development in a certain country, it will also boost the economic situation, and that will be part of the stronghold to reach the top 5 economic in 2045. And last but not least, regarding the investment. So when we talk about investment, I think previously it's also mentioned regarding a free trade agreement, when it also help the investment for those who wants to seek business or extend their business in Indonesia. These must be prioritized and prolonged procedures must be cut. Okay, so we know maybe you heard that previously in Indonesia there are so many processes, so many administrative process that probably is part of the item that actually slow down the business. Okay, so yeah, so this is from our president. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so what is an omnibus law concept on employment? Okay, maybe we heard it quite often, but we might not really understand. But as I try to make it simple, so basically, what it does is that this omnibus law try to simplify and align all the regulations that exist before, so that it will boost the economic, it will boost the productivity of the country. Okay, so actually omnibus law has not just been implemented in Indonesia, but it was implemented in many other developing countries before. So as we know that it is part regulation reformation strategy. Okay, so that with if there are too many policy that is bring out by the government in a certain sectors, and it might crossing each other, this omnibus law try to omit that. Okay, it tries to simplify and align all the different kind of regulation and policy in different sectors. Okay, so again, the basic point of this omnibus law that was created in Indonesia by our president is first is to remove the redundancy of regulations. And of course, by removing some redundancy, it will generate more efficiency of the regulations. And of course, if there is any addendum, the process, it could also be more effective. And last but not least, try to remove a sectoral ego. So it means that we need to act as a country, not as some parts of a specific, say for example, some specific sector. Yes, there will be some priority, like we know in Indonesia for the past 5 years during Joko Widodo presidency, we focus a lot on the infrastructure development in Indonesia. We also focus a lot on our natural resources development and so on. And yet, we also know that with the growth of Industry 4.0, and it might be already 5.0 now, as Jeffrey Bahar shared before, a lot of digital transformation in many areas are being held. So, in education, in e-commerce, in even the digital transformation is not just being done in the private sector, but including in the public sector, in the governmental office, in the government sectors. A lot of digital transformation is happening. Okay, so hopefully with this fast growth of Indonesia, and by having this omnibus law, we will have more and better productivity to, to actually attract many other foreign investors to come to Indonesia and work together with us. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this is just one of the example, but it's a very huge, I would say it's a very huge impact to the whole process of how a foreign investor, or not just foreign investor, but actually including also the local investor, if they want to start their business. So basically, we have the so-called OSS, or online single system, where actually, if you want to start your business, you want to open up a rep office, or you want to open up a foreign-owned company in Indonesia, everything is done online now. So with this process, again, yes, there is a process. There is some review is being done by the government, but we try to reduce the whole bureaucracy before. So we try to reduce a face-to-face interaction between the business owner and the government or the civil servant, and we try to make it everything online. This is one of the big breakthrough by the government for the past 5 years, and everything is done through online single system. As it's also stated, it's not just related with the registration or the incorporation of your company, but it is also including every other business licenses related with your company or your business. Okay, and including when we want to talk about the labor law, when we want to talk about the compliance, like the taxation, or we have some statutory body like the BPJS in Indonesia, everything is being monitored and recorded through these OSS. Okay, so hopefully with the growth of the business, with the growth of the economic, with this OSS, it will help to simplify and try to make everything very effective and efficient for everyone. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so I might go now a little bit into a bit detail of some labor law concept or some labor law compliances in Indonesia. So I think it's quite common, like in a certain country, we have in Indonesia, actually, there are 3 types of employment contract, actually, not only 2. Maybe you might only understand 2, but actually there are 3. Okay, so the first one, I think it's quite common. We call it a non-fixed term contract, or in other words, it's a permanency for the employment. Okay, and for this type of employment in Indonesia, okay, this is many of our partners or client, they try to say, hey, why is probation period is only 3 months in Indonesia? Can we extend it? Can we have more time for this probation period? By law, the answer is no. Okay, so in Indonesia, the maximum probation period is 3 months. So after that, an employer must decide, whether they want to continue the employment of the employee, or they want to terminate or move to other kind of contract-based employee, where we go to the right-hand side. It's called a term contract, or in Indonesia, it's a fixed term contract. Okay, so with the fixed term contract, it is previously, okay, what I put down here is actually the previous regulation, that the maximum renewal is 2 times, and the maximum length of the time for the first contract is 2 years, and so on, but maximum is 5 years. But since omnibus law, there's a bit of upgrade of this fixed term contract. So right now, you can do a direct 5 years contract for a fixed term contract for your employee in Indonesia. Okay, so you can go up to maximum of 5 years directly in a single contract for an employee. But of course, there are more details regarding it. So like, for example, we have to understand what kind of business, in what sector are you going into. There are some specific additional regulation to it. But basically, this omnibus law try to make easier for everyone and try to, attract more and more employers and foreign investors to go to Indonesia and try to make it easy for them, while at the same time actually not reducing any benefit for the employee. Okay. The third one, or the last one, okay, this is actually quite unique. We call it a partnership contract. Okay, partnership contract. So it can be applicable for part-time worker or a specialized freelance worker. Okay, what's the sample for this? Actually, it's very easy. Insurance agent, property agent, or maybe if Grab driver, Gojek driver, and any kind of other courier that is very much growing in Indonesia, usually they will be under this partnership contract. So they are not really an employee actually, but they are a partner. What's the difference between the fixed term and the non-fixed term with this partnership contract? Basically, this partnership contract is not really being regulated under the labor law, but it more being regulated under the civil law of Indonesia. Okay, so like our Gojek driver and Grab driver in Indonesia, and they are, because they are a partner, so they are also being paid on a daily basis based on their performance, based on their productivity and so on. Okay, so this kind of thing is we try to create. The government try to put some more flexibility on the business, so it can help the employer or the business owner, to match the situation that we have in Indonesia with their needs in their business process actually. Okay, next slide, please. Okay. All right. So yeah, I also want to talk a little bit about outsourcing. Okay, outsourcing is one of the big chunk of employment in Indonesia. Okay, it has, of course, with being an outsourcing, there's a pro and cons for this. But the omnibus law actually removes certain provision on an outsourcing under the labor law. So it would definitely give more rooms for employers or business owner if they want to focus more on their core strategy business, on their core operation, and try to outsource some of the process, including the employee, to an outsourcing company. Then it will be a win-win situation. Because sometimes we understand that an employer or a business owner, they focus more into their business. Maybe they focus more on the sales side, revenue, and so on. But sometimes they keep forgetting, on how to nurture, on how to manage their employee, how to actually build their employee and create a good environment for them. So by having this outsourcing scheme in Indonesia, the government actually try to help for everyone, for the employer and the employee. Having many, in Indonesia, there are a lot of many outsourcing company. And in this case, Bipo is actually, we also help doing this as well. But, it helps both parties, and actually not just both parties, but also the environment across the business. Why? Because as an outsourcing company, usually they will have more competency and capability, and of course they are more professional on managing their employee. And with this corporation, with the outsourcing company and the employer or the business owner, the business can definitely put more time into their core business. All right, so they can focus more on how to basically develop their business, develop the market, grab more acquisition in the market, and so on. while these outsourcing who actually manage their employee for maybe not all, again, not everyone, not all the employee or not all the function can be outsourced, but for all the common function or like labor that is usually on a daily base productivity rate, it can be put under this outsourcing. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this is also one of the things that impact the labor law when we talk about overtime. Okay, previously the overtime it's only maximum the employee can get 3 hours per day and 14 hours per week. Okay, but I try to be honest here. I try to be frank that, you know, one of the big challenge in Indonesia is when we talk about productivity. Okay, you know, Indonesia is actually one of the country in Southeast Asia that actually has the largest minimum wage. Okay, I mean, of course, we exclude Singapore because actually Singapore might have a different policy on this kind of minimum wage. But if we compare maybe like to our other neighbors like in with Malaysia, you know, Philippines, Vietnam, Thailand, actually our minimum wage in Indonesia is actually one of the highest. Okay, but the problem is that when we talk about productivity, because, you know, to reach a goal of our dream, what our president mentioned, and, you know, to become one of the developed countries in 2045, one of the things that we need to improve is our productivity. Okay, so by giving this extension of the overtime, again, overtime does not mean more productive. Okay, typically we would say that if you could settle everything during the working hours, that is productive. But again, there are some industry, there are some areas or some sectors that actually needs this additional overtime to be applicable to their employee, so that it can boost their production, say for example, for some manufacturing or some other businesses like logistic, like transportation and so on. Okay, so actually the government try to cater these needs, and by having this omnibus law, it will give more flexibility for the employer to employ their staff. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, I mentioned previously regarding the minimum wage. So with the omnibus law, actually it removes some provisions of the labor law on sectoral minimum wage. Okay, and it creates a possibility for the employers to defer the payment of minimum wage. Okay, if you take a closer look to our labor law, actually it's on Article 90 and 91, if I'm not mistaken, when they talk about the minimum wage. You know, actually there's one point stated that if the employee actually in Indonesia, if the employee does not meet or does not do the job that is being assigned to him or her based on the job description and based on the employment agreement that has been mutually agreed by the employer and the employee, actually the employer can be deferred to pay the minimum wage. Okay, but again, this is not to be made as a common practice, but of course there's a certain case that can be defined from this thing. Okay, and for SME, micro businesses and small businesses, they are exempted from the minimum wage requirement. But again, of course, there are some requirement. They need to declare themselves as a micro and small businesses, and they can be exempted from the minimum wage payment for their employee. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, termination of employment. I think this is always a very interesting topic. Okay, because you know, every foreign company who would like to do business or they want to expand to another country or to another region, I think this is one of the very interesting question and very common question they would like us to understand on how if I want to terminate an employee. Okay, why is this become very interesting? Because actually, you know, we have to understand, okay, by having employee, of course, by having employee in your company working for you, it's a cost, right? So they need to really calculate what's the risk and how much is the cost. And not just that, but from the revenue or the target that I am planning, how much cost or how much risk should I take care into the calculation, okay? So again, what has been changed since the omnibus law for this termination of employment in Indonesia actually? So first, the company still must notify the employee or the union, if any, of its intention and the reason of the termination, okay? If there are some of the clauses in the employment agreement between the employer and the employee for such termination, can be justified as well. Second, still, it requires the company to pay. There are some items. The first one is the severance pay. The second one is the service pay or the long service pay. And the last one is the compensation pay upon the termination of employment. This is actually to secure the employee. Okay. I think there are some back sound. Okay. All right. So sorry for that. Yeah, not sure. Probably coming from some participants. It's okay. All right. So what's the difference after the omnibus law? Okay. So after the omnibus law, actually, for the severance pay, the long service pay, and the compensation pay upon the termination, now it is being more, I want to say it is being more regulated based on the justification of the termination from the employer. For example, say for example, if a company or an employer terminate an employee because the employer has declared bankruptcy, okay, then the compensation or the severance payment to the employee might be lower, okay, might be lower. There's a certain multiplier that applies to this compared to that if the employer terminates an employee without any specific reason, okay? So with the new omnibus law, this termination of employment policy now is being regulated in further details, okay? So it really depends on the justification, whether the employer declare bankruptcy or the employer might, being acquired by another company or by another foreign company, or maybe if the employer have an intention to have a reorganization of the company. So this whole thing is being managed and regulated right now, and it for both sides actually, from for both the employer and the employee, it will give a more fair benefit. Okay. All right. I mean, I will not go into much detail about this because there's so many details, but at least it gives you some hints and some ideas of what the omnibus law is actually impacting our labor law. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay. There's also amendments to the Social Security law with the omnibus law. So there's a new so-called unemployment security, or in Indonesia, it's called Jaminan Kehilangan Pekerjaan. Okay, this is one of the new program that is being released by the Social Security Organizing Agency, or the BPJS, as we know in Indonesia, for the employment BPJS. Okay, so this actually also related with one of the new policy that impacts the fixed term employment. Okay, so for a fixed term employment now, for a fixed term contract employee now in Indonesia, there's a so-called compensation. Okay, so for every 12 months of consecutive work, there's a compensation that needs to be paid by the employer to the employee, which equivalent to 1 month of gross income of the employee. Okay, Again, I will not go into the detail, but this is something that actually being brought up by the government to actually secure both the employer and the employee. And I think it is more fair for everyone. And again, it's still to give more attraction, to the foreign investor to be, to have a business in Indonesia. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this is also just small information regarding a foreign employee or an expatriate. Again, with the OSS, with the online single submission that I mentioned earlier, this is also one of the key system that every business owner or employer must understand. In fact, for foreign company, if they want to start their business in Indonesia, and usually they will, invite someone from their home country to go to this new market, say for example in Indonesia, then they will need to have at least to gain some planning first on how many expatriates they would like to have. And again, the most common passes, I think most of you might aware as well, for the work permit, we call it KITAS or KITAP in Indonesia. The difference is that for KITAS, it's a temporary one. Usually the validity is up to 12 months. And for KITAP itself is a more permanent permit with the validity up to 5 years. Okay, and it can be obtained after 3 years continuous staying in Indonesia. And of course, beside the work permit, there is also a business visa that can be issued now. So again, there's with the development of the OSS and the cooperation of the OSS and actually the immigration system, it allows a much more simpler process for a foreign company or even a local company. They want to have an expatriate or a foreign employee working in Indonesia. And again, we need to take a look at the positive side, when, we want to gain our more productive situation for our employee in Indonesia, we need to learn from those who can probably become a mentor or have more skills and knowledge in a certain area. Okay, next slide, please. And this is the process, just a little bit of the idea. So, by having a recommendation letter from the Indonesian Investment Coordinating Board, and then by having the RPTKA or the Foreign Worker Placement Plan, and then the Foreign Labor Permit up to the Temporary Identification Card or the KITAS or KITAP. Okay, so I can say now the average lead time for this process is typically 1 month. Okay, sometimes it could take up to 2 months. It really depends on the documents that is being submitted, whether it's completed or not. Sometimes we need to take care more into the details of the document that is needed for this whole process. Okay, all right, next slide. I think I'm just gonna summarize a little bit on how actually omnibus law on job creation impact to Indonesia market. If you see here, that actually this is one of the research is being done by the local research company in Indonesia, the ease of doing business in Indonesia. So the rank actually we get 73 for the DB rank, and the DB score is 69.6. Okay, but if you see on the chart below, for starting a business in Indonesia, we got a quite high score of 81.2. Okay, so this is one of the big attractiveness for the foreign company nowadays, to start their business in Indonesia. And of course, we still have a lot of homework to do. Okay, our government, not just the government, I think everyone, including all the employer, all the local players, all the local business owners, and all the foreign investor who would like to go into the business in Indonesia, they will make this whole thing, and our government definitely, again, as our president mentioned, they will put some priority on to make everything more smooth, to align all the policy and regulation. So at the end of the day, I hope that, and we hope together that all those policy is for the good for everyone. It's a win-win solution for everyone. Okay, I think
All right.
this is my last slide. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Pak Mario. I trust that his sharing has provided us knowledge on the structure as well as the compliance of labor law in Indonesia. This will be very useful to those who are keen to start their business in Indonesia. Perhaps we're going to go a quick poll. Who wants to be in touch with your BPO? Maybe you can run the poll now. You just wait for around 3 seconds. All right. Now let's welcome Ms. Henny Sujono, who will be talking about leading the change in e-commerce through collaboration. Without further ado, Ms. Henny, please over to you. Thank you so much.
Hi everyone, my name is Henny. I'm Vice President from Cross Border in Blibli.com. So today I want to present about the topic leading the change in the e-commerce through collaboration. Before that, I will give some summary for the Indonesia market overview. Can you next slide? Then yeah, number three. Okay, so I want to inform that Indonesia have a total populations of 278 million with around 370 million mobile connection and more than 200 million internet user. We are pretty social with the 190 million active media user. Next slide. Yeah, consumer behavior changed post-COVID pandemic. Some of the most impacted business are health and medical. Majority of the people shift their focus into the home-related activity, including home cook and work from home. The result as a result e-commerce and less of the traditional groceries. If you can see the data that I share, the e-commerce spend and growth by the category in 2022, the leading category come from the food and personal care, followed by toys and toys, DIY and hobbies, and the third one is the fashion and beauty. The growth of three categories is quite significant, more than 50% compared to 2021. Next slide. If we are looking for the overview of the consumer goods e-commerce, number of the people purchasing online currently around 158 millions, with the total annual spend almost 54 billion, with average revenue per customer is around $339, and mostly purchased on mobile compared with the desktop. Yeah. Next slide. Okay. I will give the little bit about background for the Blibli. We are part of the PT Jarum, deserve the business growth with the strong financial and various business. It is owned by the owned and controlled by the Hartono brothers, the richest in Indonesia. Next slide. Some of the company with the group ranging from financial and banking. This is the famous BCA. This is the largest market cap in the Southeast Asia per 2 days ago. And the second one, hotel and resort, Padma and Kempinski, both are the 5-star luxury hotel, followed by the shopping mall, Grand Indonesia Shopping Mall. Blibli as our e-commerce pillar, as well as Sarana Menara Nusantara as the largest telco tower company in Indonesia, among others. Next slide. Since the beginning, the mission is to become the most trusted omnichannel commerce and lifestyle platform in Indonesia. With the joining of the ticket.com, the second largest travel e-commerce in Indonesia, and the range market, publicity list leading grocery market, we will become the pioneer and leading omnichannel commerce in Indonesia. Okay, next slide. We have 10 million active users who generate most of 2 billion traffic in a year. We also have a 24/7 customer service. We have one of the most comprehensive method and secure payment with the 30+ partner, as well as 20 warehouse to support wealth distribution across Indonesia. We also cooperate with the 220+ logistic partner around Indonesia also. Next slide. We have almost 100,000 brand with the 30 million+ product and 276,000 seller. We still grow more for the next year. Okay, the next slide. Our vision, vision is customer satisfaction, the best customer experience, and full integrated shopping experience to our customer. We give the free shipping to the seller. We give the fast delivery. We also have 2 jam sampai services. We give the promise 100 original product. We also give to 24. We have 24/7 customer care, and also the secure payment and 50 days return policy for the certain category. Okay, next slide. In terms of the category, currently we have 16 main category that cover almost every product from the handphone and tablet, consumer good, lifestyle, and digital and travel. We also sell ticket. We also cooperate with the ticket.com, collaborate with ticket.com and sell the ticket, and also sell the hotel to the customer. We have the next slide. We have been partnered with a lot of the most well-known global brand partners from the various industry. If you can see, we have Adidas, Access. We have an offline store for the Samsung, and we are on the progress to open Apple Store offline exclusive with the with Blibli. Next slide. Some of our anchor store, including Adidas, Nike, NBA, Samsung, with and the next one will be the Apple Store. Okay, this is I want to share about our cross-border program. We have been running the cross-border program since 2017. Sorry. 17. Singapore is one of our sorry, next slide. Okay. Singapore is one of our main focus country. Why? Because Singapore is the nearest country from Indonesia, and we also looking for many brand for the outside Indonesia that open the brand in Singapore. So we focusing to connect with some brand principal from Singapore. Next slide. Before sebelumnya, sorry. Halo. Okay. This is some well-known Singapore brand that already on board with us. We're exclusive with the Tintin. We also have a Kino Nimitsu. Now they exclusive with us. We have a Tiger Balm, Yuan Sang, and many of like Fragrant, Irvin, etc. and many more. of the brand. Then we are still looking for many of brand from Singapore to onboard with us. That's why we also, thanks to the SBF also, they help us to introduce some of the brand from Singapore to onboard with the Blibli.com. What we okay, the next slide. What we can do for to support the Singapore brand, we support our partner through our own media, such as like carousel apps. We also give the microsite to the seller or brand principal. We also post in our social media. We also have an email newsletter and post notification. Just we are one of the most popular e-commerce in social media. We have many of the followers from the Facebook, from the Twitter, from Instagram. We also engage with the TikTok also. Okay, next slide. Okay, this is the some performance for Singapore brand. We managed to grow 25% in 2022 compared with 2021, with the growth also for the order 45% and following with the brand 30% compared with the last year. Our top category for Singapore, is the number one is health and beauty. The number two, toys and video games, following the Blibli Mart. Blibli Mart is like a groceries product. Okay, okay. This is the last the slide. If your company want to interested to join with us, you can contact directly using this link to doing the online registration, or maybe you want to contact us by this email. Hope we can collaboration and cooperate in the next. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Shani.
Yeah.
I appreciate your presentation. Indeed, e-commerce can be one of the alternatives for Singapore businesses, who want to start their journey in Indonesia. Thank you so much, Bu Henny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Without further ado, we have our final speaker. I'm inviting Ms. Tona Hutaruk to share about various Jakarta project showcase. Over to you, Ms. Tona.
Thank you, Sham. Hello, everyone. My name is Tona Hutaruk. I'm the head of Jakarta Investment Center, an entity under the Department of Investment and One-Stop Service in the Jakarta provincial government. So today, I'm going to talk about connecting with Jakarta through investment. Next. Okay, this is the outline. So basically 3 parts: highlight our commitment and the ease of doing business in Jakarta. Next slide. Okay, next. Yeah, so I'm going to tell you a bit about the highlights of Jakarta and why we think that Jakarta is one of the emerging innovation hotspots in Indonesia. We are the capital city and also the largest metropolitan in Indonesia and Southeast Asia. Our economic growth increased up to 5.5%. Investment growth also reached to 14.1%, and we contribute dominantly 16-something% to national economic share. 93.2% of our population uses household internet access and cell phone ownership, which is good. And we are the home for 6 Forbes Global 2000 companies, 1 Fortune 500 companies, it is Pertamina, and also 4 unicorn companies. So with that, total 11 million of population in the 600 km² area of Jakarta, we have a daily 4 million people commuting. And then also 3.5 million cars, 16 million motorcycles, and sadly we produce 7,800 tons of waste daily. So that is the figure of Jakarta. Next. Next slide, please. Yeah. So this is what we've been doing. We've been doing in the last 5 years. We are progressing quite good in the last 5 years. So now we're happy to share to you that 82% of citizens are within walking distance to public transport mode. thanks to all the development of infrastructure and then enlarging the route of public transport. Also, we have massively developed 377 public parks during the last 5 years, 29 urban forests, making 91% of citizens are within walking distance to our green open spaces. We have also developed 33 towers of affordable housing and then successfully reduced 25% of our daily waste through the implementation of waste bank and also citizen participations in sorting out garbage or waste from their houses. Also, something that is significant is we have built more than 550 miles of pedestrian path, 60 miles of bike lane, which some of it are protected lanes, also 33 docks, spots of bike sharing. In terms of tackling the climate change issue and flood or disaster, we also in the process of building 6 large-scale retention ponds, 28,000 vertical drainage, and also some other measure and efforts in the scope of flood management system. Next. Do you see the last picture here? I cannot see the last picture. Okay, I'm just gonna go through this. Okay, so this should be 5 pictures, but I can only see 3 of them. I don't know why. All right, so we have just recently finished building the Jakarta International Stadium and conducted the Formula E, the first event in Southeast Asia for Formula E. And then we now have the beautiful Taman Ismail Marzuki, a center of arts, culture, and education. It's also a heritage in the downtown of Jakarta. And also we have the biggest training center for student athletes in Indonesia called the PPOP Ragunan Athletes School. And then the other 2 slides here, probably you cannot see, but I'm just going to tell you it is about the ecotourism development in Kepulauan Seribu, which we are now focusing and try to promote the ecotourism there. Only 50 minutes from the mainland Jakarta, and also yeah, now you have the picture. And also the Old Town Batavia, which we have just recently finished, revitalized with the new concept of Old Batavia, with a huge pedestrian plaza, train station, museum, and various venue for MICE business. Next. Okay, next. With all that being said, our commitment, Jakarta's provincial government commitment towards a more resilient Jakarta is firm. It is manifested in our midterm and long-term plan of spatial plan and also regional development plan. The first one is building a new transit-oriented and digital city. And then about the housing settlements, we focus on the decent, affordable and for housing settlements, kemudian balance and sustainable environment, global economic hub, sustainable and development of Kepulauan Seribu, and also with Jakarta being the central of government and cultural destinations with all the target and indicators stated in the midterm and long-term plan. Next. So our next development priorities, these are also stated in the law. So our focus sector is the first one. On the left-hand side is the digital hub of innovation and mobilization. So everything related to digital transformation, digital payment, financial technology, e-commerce, AI, healthcare service, telecommunication. That will be our main focus up to 2026, also until 2040. And then the next one is infrastructure and property development, still in the effort for expanding green open spaces, the transit-oriented development, vertical housing, etc. And then transportation development. As you may know, electric vehicle is one of our most focus for the transportation area. Also the ecotourism development for Kepulauan Seribu, especially, and then also adaptation and mitigation of natural disaster, but the warning system, drainage system, and the last one is global financial and economic hub. Next, please. Okay, so these are some of our project showcase. I'm going to give you a little bit of a description. The first one, in the area of transit-oriented development, we have 3 big projects conducted by our regional-owned enterprise, PT MRT Jakarta, Pembangunan Saranajaya, and Jakarta Industrial Estate Pulau Gadung. So the first one on the left-hand side is South Jakarta mixed-use development adjacent to the Lebak Bulus station of MRT. The project cost is around 180 mils. Also, the Tanah Abang transit-oriented development, the project cost is around 940 mils. And the last one is the development of industrial estate located in the East Jakarta. Next. Other than the transit-oriented development for the transport infrastructure itself, we have, of course, the MRT Jakarta projects for the phase 3 and phase 4. These 2 are still under discussion of looking for potential lender and also partner with the project cost, as you can see in the screen, around 10.9 billion, and the other one for the Fatmawati Taman Mini is around 1 billion. Next. Still in the sector of low carbon transport, we are also building the LRT, phase 2B and phase 3B. This is also one of our focus that is now ongoing. Next. For waste management, the PT Kawasan Berikat Nusantara has the idea of building the hazardous and toxic waste treatment plant, which they have the land, and they are now looking for the potential investor and partner to build and operate the treatment plant. Whereas the Jakarta Propertindo, for the right-hand side, project cost still under discussion and under study. The intention is building the ITF, the intermediate treatment facility, micro for commercial area. And then next. Other sector is ecotourism. The first one is the health tourism for senior. This will be in the east side of Jakarta with the project cost predicted to be 37 million. Conducted by PT Jakarta Turisindo. The 3 of these are all conducted by PT Jakarta Turisindo, also one of our regional owned enterprise. And then in the middle is the development of Kepulauan Seribu. So we feel that Kepulauan Seribu have been underutilized after all this time. So now in the next 5-10 years, we are really focusing in terms of government budget, but also try to involve the investment of private sector to build the Kepulauan Seribu. And also the right-hand side is the Jakarta landmark development somewhere in the Pantai Indah Kapuk in the north of Jakarta. Also the project of Jakarta Turisindo with the project of 2348 mils. Next, please. Last but not least, this is the sector of renewable energy, electric buses, and also the charging station and other supporting facility for electric vehicle are being the main focus for PT Transportasi Jakarta, which they intend to replace all their fleet into electric buses. The project cost is 0.14 million. And also they are very progressively and aggressively finding partners and investors for charging stations. And on the right-hand side is the installment of solar rooftop development, which is conducted by PT Kawasan Berikat Nusantara. So all the projects here are conducted by the regional owned enterprise, which the government of Jakarta has share in. Next. Okay, so that being said, the gap between the infrastructure needs and the government budget is quite big. There are 503 trillion investment gap in 2030 if we want to finance all with the government budget. Next. That's why the intention is to involve as many as investors to come collaborate with us, with the government, because we really cannot do it alone. And we are happy to expect an acceleration in 2030 in terms of Jakarta investment. In 2020 alone, the progress is quite good, and we are confident, optimistic to grow beyond target and increase our investment number with all the stakeholders. Next. Okay, so next, very quickly in the last 5 minutes, I'm going to give a brief explanation about how we promote ease of doing business, because we want to attract as many investors to escalate our income in Jakarta as to regenerate our city. So the first one is OSS risk-based system. I think Pak Mario before has explained perfectly all about that, so I'm not going to go into deep about that. Next. So basically the online single submission system is managed by the central government. And then there is very user-friendly using the risk-based system, where you can just easily pick your business and then see the criteria, etc. That you can follow the steps very easy compared to before. So this is one of the system that is, can be very useful for new investors, new parties that want to build a new business as well, those who want to expand their business. Next. Next, please. Okay, so these are just the slides explaining about the OSS. I think I'm just going to go through it, pass it. Next, please. Okay, this is about location permit. Next, about the obtaining business environment permit. And then next, the business permit, how many days, step one, step two, etc. You can just find it easily on the system. And next, please. Commercial operational license, and then next, please. Also the expansion of business licensing and data renewal, also using the OSS system. Next. Now, but if you cannot find what you're looking for in the OSS, should you need any discretion, you need any facilitation, you need to ask something, you have the Jakarta Investment Center, which is my office now. So next, we are a one-stop integrated service. We provide easier permit and licensing, free, because we are the government, we have that duty. And the organizational structure is consists of research, information and promotion, and also the public-private partnership unit. Next. So we do project curation facilitation, which we measure several aspects from the strategic, marketing, legal, risk, etc. And then we try to review and analyze the compatibility with green investment and attractiveness to investors. We can facilitate and help you with that. And then we can, measure how feasible or how bankable your project is. And then we categorize into included or included if required, excluded, etc. So that what we in Jakarta Investment Center are doing as a part of our duty as a government. The next. We also have the investment map or Jakpintas, where this is basically next. They basically combining the zoning or spatial plan together with all the bank data that we have, demography, and then public facilities, income of people, many other source of bank data that we have. So whenever you want to, for example, you want to find land, you want to know where should I have my business, etc. You can come and then we can help you with all the bank data that we have through this Jakpintas or the investment map, digitalization of the data map. Next. Yeah, this is also the Jakpintas, this preview of Jakpintas. Next. Which we also combine all those data with the environmental carrying capacity and the livability index, and then making the investment potential map, where you can find all the data that you need, all the factors and elements that you need to consider before you're building a property, or just you want to, escalate your height of property, for example. So we can help you curating and then facilitation of the information, and also give you recommendation and what is allowed, what is not allowed, and where should you do your business. Next. So we also carry out some promotion activities. Next. Last September, we just finished doing the Investment Business Forum, Jakarta Investment Forum 2022. Also, we have several webinars like this called JIC Talks. Next. These are the gallery from our last event in the September 1st. And then we also have the project memorandum understanding signing between our enterprises with investors. Next. Next. This is what we do as well. We do facilitating investors during the forum. And then next please. Here we conduct also several JIC talks, like classes. So like 10 to 12 classes in 1 year to talk about the topics that are currently update, especially in the green investment area. Next. Okay, so the next is Jakarta Investment Forum 2023, and I think that's all for my presentation. Next, do we still have more? Oh yeah. Okay, so the tagline is "Come and Grow with Jakarta" and "Invest Now, Invest Jakarta." Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bu Tona. Thank you so much. We have learned that Jakarta has many interesting projects, and hopefully in future there's more inquiry. We can come over to you and help us to facilitate the company, Bu. Now that we have heard all the speakers' presentation, I'm pretty sure that many of us are still curious, and maybe you want to seek more information on all the things our speakers have shared previously. That's why we'll be moving forward to our next agenda on the Q&A and panel discussion. Will be moderated by Pak James Pinto, President of Singapore Association Indonesia. I hand over to you, Pak James.
Hello, thank you. Thank you very much, Sham. Very nice to see everyone. Just an introduction about Singapore Association Indonesia. My name is James. I've been in Indonesia for close to 10 years. So what we do at the Singapore Association Indonesia is that we also try to bridge Singaporeans, right, who come into Indonesia, to give them the community spirit. So we are bridge for Singaporeans coming in. So if you are keen and interested to know more about our activities, you can actually go to www.singaporean.id, and you can sign up with us, and then we can keep in connections while you actually venture into Indonesia. So before that, I think many of you will have questions. If you have questions, please do type your questions in the question box. Yeah. So before I go into there, I just have a few questions. I think let me start with Jeffrey.
Yes, James. Hi.
Yep. Hi, nice to see you again, Jeffrey. So Jeffrey, I think you talk about education, growing education in Indonesia. What are the opportunities? I think there are some people very interested in exploring the opportunities in education. I think what is your foresight in the government creating a singular framework or singular education platform that can help to boost this transaction or boost the education sector? What are your thoughts?
To be on a singular platform, I think it will still take a while, Mr. James. I think what happens now is there's a lot of multiple platforms that's providing the needs for different segments and different levels of educations, whether it's formal, informal, as well as workforce training and so on, actually. So I believe that's what will be happening in the next 3 to 5 years before things consolidate and merge into a single platforms. That's what I foresee happening in the next 3 to 5 years, James.
Okay, maybe the rest of the panelists, in terms of education sectors, where do you guys see the disruption? Maybe you can also share your feedback. Okay, in that next question, I post this to Ivy, so I just go follow the speaker flow. Ivy, I think many of us are still confused on the free trade agreement. So many free trade agreements out there. So what is the process, or how does SBF help them to actually navigate? Can give us an example on how you actually navigate these areas.
So thank you for the question, James. So I think for the start, like for duty optimization, company might wish to map your supply chain to understand the trading scenario, like take into consideration understanding where are the goods manufactured, where are you going to import to, and also the product harmonized code classifications. And then I think company needs to look into assess into, like, because there's so many FTA, which FTA can actually most beneficial for the company, like determine which FTAs are available and which of the and also the savings that each FTA provides. Then after that, look into like where are your source raw materials coming from and the manufacturer process. We understand that it's not so easy. It's definitely not that easy. There's you really need to read a lot more into it. So that's why the team is here, and we work closely with our Ministry of Trade and Industry and also Enterprise Singapore to help the business community to understand FTA more in depth. So in order for me to really advise like which product benefit all these things, I would need the product HS code classification, and I would encourage the company to write in to me at fta@sbf.org so I can assist more in-depth FTA assistance in it.
Okay, I think that's very clear. So it's more to that. So one thing I also realized you shared about is the what's the fund, MRA grant.
Yeah,
right?
correct.
So I think it's also maybe Sham can assist. I'm a business, right? Say I want to set up in Indonesia. What are the first steps that I need to take? That you advise us to take. Who should I engage with, or what is the process?
Okay, maybe I go on. So the market risk assistance grant is for Singapore companies who have 30% local shareholder. Pak James, as long as you have a Singapore company in Singapore and registered in Singapore, in Accra or in Indonesia, we call it online single submission, and they have a Singaporean 30% local shareholder and with a turnover less than 100 million, so they can apply for the grant. But you need to find your own vendors. We also have recommended vendors inside our platform in Enterprise Singapore, where you can get their quotation, but it's a reimbursed mode. So you need to sustain your own financial business model to pay the vendor first, and then subsequently they can be reimbursed after they be audited. So for more details, they can engage to me and we can discuss more of the grant. And I believe it's also a good collaboration if you find a partner to do investment projects in Jakarta and take up the grant, because the grant is split into three. So one is a setup fee for incorporation that's cost around 3,000, and then there's another for BD and for business development for projects. You develop your business in the particular country, that's added 50,000, and then there's trade show, trade fair that give you a reimbursement of 20,000. So total up is around 100,000 together with the FTA also. Right, so that's a bit about the MRA grant in a brief summary. And on top of that, for companies, for SMEs who can't be able to, as the new regulation, you need to have an investment capital of 10 billion rupiah. I mean, everybody knows this is in Google, Yeah, Pak Mario, we discussed this on our last session. So something that SMEs can consider to onboard on Jarum under blibli.com group, where they don't need to even set up the entity, and then they can start at least to test their product, their brands in the market through online. I mean, e-commerce now is something after the post-pandemic is something that you can leverage on to broadcast your product and get more wide brand awareness for your particular product. And everybody know Indonesia is a big market, but the compliance, the framework and the regulation which a lot of Singaporeans need to understand. So example, like Omnibus law is being implemented and is being presidential degree law and implementation is totally a different section, Pak Mario. Yeah. So these are the few things that I think Singaporeans need to understand more on getting on board into business in Indonesia. And I think Indonesia, like everybody knows, is a huge country, and furthermore, you know, Kalimantan is going to be the next new capital. Everybody is knowing it, and now recently, Pak Jokowi also giving new tax, tax cut, tax holiday more for anybody who are interested to invest in the new capital. And Jakarta, as we hear also from Butona, there's a lot of projects going on, and I believe we're going to meet up soon in Butona. We're going to discuss more how Singapore companies can come on board and work partnership with the local company to grow or to produce on the project that is available in Jakarta. And I think one more thing, maybe I want to just add on, Pak James, through Pak Mario, about the labor law. You see, there's 4 hours per day, 18 hours a week, yeah, Pak Mario. There's a few companies who have a factory or production running here. I just received a WhatsApp. They do not answer on the Zoom, so they're asking me, is it only for the general worker or is it also for the executive level?
Okay. Yeah, I think the overtime policy that I share is actually for the general worker, for those who are actually working 5 working hours per week and 8 hours per day. Of course, like when we talk about the production line, like in the manufacturing or any kind of other production, typically they would have a different kind of policy, and it also being regulated under the labor law and the omnibus law for the job creation. So if they have maybe like working 6 days per week or 7 days per week, but 7 days per week is definitely not possible. Okay, you definitely need at least 1 day off. Okay, so 6 days per week, maybe only 7 hours per day. So that would have a different kind of concept of the overtime as well. Yeah.
Thanks, Pak Mario. Sorry, Pak James. Maybe I would add on to Butona. Butona, what's the difference? Maybe Singaporean company might want to know what's the difference between DPM TSP and also Jakarta Investment Center, Butona. Well, I mean, what's the different function or services is provided?
Thank you, Sam, for the questions. Actually, we are part of the DPM PTSP. So Jakarta Investment Center is like a technical unit of the Department of Investment and One-Stop Service, which we specialize in facilitation and promotion of investment in Jakarta. So we are the same. We are part of the DPM PTSP. All
right. Thank you so much. Bu Heni, how about you see what's the trend right now? Thank you so much for the compliments. SBF have been working together with Libby to bring SMEs on board to sell their brands in Indonesia. What do you see the trend coming? What kind of category is doing well currently right now after the post-pandemic?
If you can, I can see the trend. If you know, our Indonesia regulation is quite difficult, yeah, for especially for the tax and duties. Yeah, if the government everyone know, yeah, like some of the textile products, basically for the fashion product is quite popular right now, but because of the high tax and duties, it's many of the seller they cannot sell on board to the Indonesia because of the tax. Yeah, we also cannot do the under value because we can do the under value. So so if the sellers sell their fashion product, the customer will be see the duty and tax will be higher than the product price itself. For example, the products maybe $50, maybe the tax will become $45 because for the textile itself is 40 until 60%. Only for the tax and duties. That's why for the Singapore, the data that I shared, for the Singapore, we looking for some of the category not have the high tax, like groceries products, like health and beauty. For the cross-border health and beauty products is quite popular because of the post-pandemic also, like a vitamin. And right now for Indonesia have an issue about the syrups. You know, the syrup, paracetamol, right? Yeah. So many of Indonesia customer, they're looking for the Singapore medicine.
I see. James, it's good for you to broadcast on that to Singapore companies.
Many Indonesia, they open for the Just Tip. Say also, for the Singaporean, maybe they cannot get the products like Panadol, because many of the Indonesia Just Tip people, they buy and they sell to the Indonesia customer.
Correct. Dua kali lipat. Harganya dua kali lipat.
Yes. Because Indonesia is quite. They really follow the trend. Like for example, like the back beyond the fine. If you know the Singaporeans, you know, right? Yep. Indonesia is quite popular. Many of the Just Tip, they open PO for the beyond the fine, and sell all. This is really crazy for Indonesia. Indonesia people, they very follow for the trend.
Thank you so much. James, over to you. Maybe one last final question. I just remember on the renewable energy. Butona, we have a few companies who are interested into the solar panel projects. Do you think on your side, I mean, they couldn't go in as 100% ownership. Do you think on your side, do you have partners that you can link them up? I mean, as part of facilitation, do you help companies who wants to come into the Indonesian market, but not to be the main stakeholder, but part of the stakeholder, and then you can link up with other companies where they can co-join venture on that particular project?
Yes, sure. We have several colleagues, and that's what we do actually in Jakarta Investment Center. So you can just come here. My office is, I think, near from your office.
Yes.
And we can discuss later on. You can find us in our Instagram and also other social media, and we are welcome to and very happy to have you here.
Thank you.
Definitely can.
Over to you, Pak James.
Okay. So I go back to Henny. Actually, I'm very interested in knowing maybe a bit more on the processes, or actually, in terms of maybe onboarding new Singapore businesses to test the market. Do you have like a action plan to help them to get on board and start to push the sales? What's the matrix of success?
For the Singapore, we have a plan. Like I already shared with the Shyam. We want to do the special microset only for the Singapore seller. So every for the one microset, we can put all the brand on all the principal into one microset, and also we post using our own media channel, like push notification, give pay ads. We push in the Facebook also, so to get more customer to buy Singapore product from the Singapore seller.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I think Mario, I have a very good question, right? So I think you hit on a topic that is I've been to Demnaka a few times, mediation. I've been through the process. I understand the challenges, but offhand, for me, I think what are the key advice you can give to people who are exploring? What are the common mistakes that someone should do before coming in Indonesia?
Okay, thank you, Mr. James. I think the most important thing, never assume anything. Okay, never assume anything. Get your facts, get the data, and again, talk to the right people. Okay, because say for example like this, when we talk about tax, okay, especially maybe I'll talk about income tax for the personal income tax or employee income tax. Okay, we know that it is also a common question. All right, hey, how can I reduce my income tax? Okay, I think it's a common question asked by a lot of foreign investors coming into Indonesia. So even if you go to certain, say, certain consulting firm, they might give you different answers. But again, try to be more objective. If those people able to share with you the regulation, then you can trust them. But if it's just we're in Indonesia, we say katanya, yeah. Just because he said that, just because she said that, please never assume. Get the data, get the fact, and try to comply on any kind of regulations. Okay, so like the statutory, all the things that relate with the employment, make sure you understand before you actually work on it. Yeah, I think that's the most important thing, Mr. James.
Yeah, I have to agree with you because yeah. So when I first came in here, was what you say, kata just yeah, I listen here, I hear from there. So I think it's good that SBF is here. So it's also a single point for people, those who are attending today, to actually reach out to the SBF team, leverage on who they know and what they know to help you to smoothen the entry in Indonesia, be it whatever sectors or whatever industries that you are playing on or planning to come into Indonesia to start your business or to explore new opportunities.
Yeah.
Thank you, Pak James. I think Singapore Association in Indonesia Committee also play an important role to complement us, yeah, in helping each other. I think I got one last question, just to add on, Pak James. I think it's from Krishna to Ibu Tona. How will the move of capital from Jakarta to Nusantara impact all these development plans?
Okay, thank you for the questions. Well, in terms of the conduction of the government, of course, it will be impacted. But in terms of the continuation of our projects, I don't think it will affect that much because of our project that I mentioned before, they are all already incorporated into our midterm long-term plan, which aiming to make Jakarta the very business and a center of economics for Indonesia, which we are already now. So in that sense, all the projects, especially the one in the public domain, will always continue, transportation, waste, and etc. So there will be there, and it as well encourages us in the government to find more creative financing ways to fund for those projects.
Okay, thank you so much. Over to you, James.
Okay, I think my next question, I go to Jeff. Yeah, Jeffrey, maybe we can have a conversation here. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So basically, maybe you can share a bit more on what Spiral does and how can we use Spiral to actually help us into getting to the market.
Rather than promoting the service, but maybe I will share how is the journey for Singaporean companies to enter Indonesia, right? As Pasham has mentioned there's a few options to go into Indonesia. First, I think you can find partners through a business matching, whether you're looking for a local distributor, local reseller. If you can't sell your products through cross borders, then the option is to find a local partners, whatever type of partners you need. To be present in the Indonesia market for selling, for vendor, for supplying, to represent you in Indonesia. That's a very typical process, which is a business matching MRA grant that you can use. And Spire definitely can do a business matching, as well as many other people here. I think James also, Ibu Tona also on larger investments. The other way, it's actually to hire a local guy to so-called open the door. That's very open. That's also very common. Meaning that you're hiring a local business development manager. That's also funded by MRA grant. And especially for projects engineering, I think you need 6 months, 9 months, or up to 12 months to open the door, build a connection, get into the doors of your targets. If you're selling direct to large company, construction project, construction service, That's the typical things that you do. And you need a local guy rather than going back and forth for many weeks in Indonesia. That's a very natural process, actually. So then if it's a very new market, Indonesia, to you, and you assume it could be different than Singapore, the best way is to do a study, understanding what is the competition, how is the pricing of, I mentioned, education, e-learning system, maybe it's different. You need an entry package, a lower price in Indonesia. So you might need to do a bit of pricing research to adjust your pricing that fits into the local market, and how much to charge for your SaaS business model and so on. So those are typical entry points that a lot of Singaporean company can do. And Spire is, of course, one of the vendors can help you to do that, James.
Yeah, I think you talk about the education, e-education, online learning, something that resonates with me because for me, personal perspective, I am a person of lifelong learning, continuous education. That has always been in my blood. So it's also the same thing I try to do here in terms of for my staff. But I think also maybe this opportunity for those listening is actually in the content. I think what is missing is Indonesia. Yeah, there are platforms out there, but the content to the industry. So for me, generally, I'm in the IT industry, so my contents are not that yet. So there's also an opportunity of building up these contents for your different verticals and different industries. There's an opportunity just throwing out there. So anybody want to steal the idea, if you are focused in the engineering field, create the e-learning content and go and make your money.
That's true. I totally agree, James. I think it has to be in the local context, local contents, local offering, because I think that's what works here. You can't come in with a global standards package or offering or product and services. Maybe that 60% works, but I think in most cases, you need to customize to the local needs and the content as well, as James has pointed out, James.
James, maybe your closing remarks already come to at 5 p.m.
Okay.
There's still a lot of audience, but I think the speakers have other meetings and appointments. So maybe you, as a president of Singapore Indonesian community business and also the family community, what is your advice for Singapore companies who want to enter into the Indonesian market? And your closing remarks, please, Pak James.
I think to end today's wonderful webinar, I think for aspiring Singapore companies or any companies that want to come to Indonesia, the first step you have to do is to look around you and appreciate and connect with people who are already in the market. Like Singapore Association, do connect with us. We can help you bridge the gap into market entry, to hold your hand and guide you in a way, because it's very different than Singapore. It's very localized. If you go to different parts of Indonesia, you have different thinkings, different processes. So it's very unique. So to end today's webinar, my one advice is that don't be shy. Nudge anyone here today, nudge SBF, nudge me, or nudge any of the presenters here. I think we'll be more than happy to help you to succeed. So that's all for me, Syam.
Thank you so much, Rajim. To all the speakers, thank you so much for your time and all the sharings, and also for the projects that's available in Jakarta. We'll share to all our participants. To all audience, we really appreciate everyone participating today. Once again, we'd like to thank everyone to making this webinar a great success. If you have any questions and comments, you can scan the QR code on the screen and give your feedback to us. Thank you once again for joining this webinar, and see you all again. Thank you to all speakers. Thank you to James, Butona, Pak Jeffrey, my colleague Ivy, and Pak Mario, Bu Henny. Thank you so much, everybody. Once again, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you so much.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Salam.